and welcome into the Young Dad Podcast. Whether you're outside grilling, mowing the lawn, changing dirty diapers, or maybe, just maybe, you got a moment to sit back and relax and listen to your favorite podcast. Whatever you're doing, wherever you're at, thanks for being here and thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Jay, and today we're diving into relationship, attraction, and what it really takes to build a fulfilling partnership as a man and as a father. Our guest today, Paul Bauer, a certified master life coach and NLP practitioner, bestselling author, and host of the Come On Man podcast. Paul's journey from struggling in relationships to understanding the psychology of attraction is inspiring. After serving in the U.S. Navy, navigating marriage, divorce, and deep self reflection, he realized that he was the common denominator in his struggles. That realization led him on a mission to help men reclaim their masculine confidence, improve their relationships, and develop a presence that commands respect and desire. Paul's latest book, The Essential Skills of a Masculine Presence: Psychology to Paradigm, yeah, dash is would be to paradigm, I believe, right? I think so.
Psychology dash paradigm. Yeah.
Psychology. Oh, okay. I thought the dash meant to paradigm, but
No. I can explain the titling too. It's kind of an interesting story.
definitely we'll get into that just in a second here. So that book breaks down the psychological and behavioral patterns that help men become the leaders their partners crave. So make sure you grab your juice box, grab a snack, and let's jump into the conversation. Paul, welcome first and foremost.
Jay, thank you so much for having me, man. I really appreciate you having me on your podcast.
Of course, man. This is gonna be a good conversation. I think a lot of men today, more than ever, need to hear this. Need to have these conversations like this about becoming the partner that they're becoming the man that their partners deserve. That's what I was trying to say there. It wouldn't come out, get it? Because come on, man.
Yeah, I see what you did there. Yeah.
But no, it's so important. Like here in 2025, like it's the attack on masculinity and the attack on the masculine man is like more fierce than it ever has been before. And so having these conversations, reminding men and validating men, like, hey, be masculine. Like, it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Keep being masculine. You can do it. It's fine. I think these conversations are super important to have. So go ahead and start kind of whatever you want to start in all this journey, whether it's from the Navy to the book today or kind of wherever along the way. Kind of take us through your journey to what led you to doing all the work that you're doing now.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to call it my Batman origin story. Yeah, so I was back in high school. I grew up in a small town called Conifer, Colorado. I went to Evergreen High School. If you guys have ever seen the show South Park, one of the creators of the show, Trey Parker, went to my high school and my junior high and stuff like that. So South Park is very much like the way I grew up, the cartoon.
Okay,
And
that's a flex, but okay, that's a cool flex.
yeah,
But
it's an interesting one. Yeah, yeah. Some of the characters in the show are real people.
no
But
way.
what's that?
They were like real in like real life. They're not just
Yeah,
all
yeah,
made up.
yeah. Like, yeah. On a good example of that is Mr. Mackey on South Park. The real guy's name was Mr. Lackey, and he was our guidance counselor in junior high. And he sounded just like they have him on the show. He looks just like the guy in the show. It's hilarious. He's a real guy. Yeah.
Did he know?
I think he passed away several years ago, but yeah.
Did he know?
I don't know if he knew or not. I don't know, but I've also heard Trey on interviews mentioned specifically Mr. Lackey, and I was like, that was crazy. But yeah, so I grew up in that area. I was always pretty good with girls. I always had girlfriends growing up. I lost my virginity when I was like 16 in high school, but I was always that guy that had the sniper dating mentality. Where if you're not familiar with that, it's where one girl's nice to you and you just go all in on that one girl, all right? You just get your blinders on and you're like, this one's for me. She's my soulmate or whatever. I had lots of soulmates when I was a teenager. And I had, I had girlfriends in high school. When I got out of high school, I ended up joining the U.S. Navy when I was 18 and dated gals when I was in the Navy. And then about 2 years into my enlistment, I met my now ex-wife. And so that's sort of where the real journey began, because I was that guy that was always running for that white picket fence. I always wanted the nuclear family, like the 2.5 kids. And so when I met my now ex-wife, we met when I was on home on leave. So I took some time off. I came back out to Colorado. I was stationed in San Diego at the time. I met her through some mutual friends and immediately was smitten by her. Ended up spending the whole time, like week that I was on leave, hanging out with her and spending time with her. And then we developed this long distance relationship for almost a year. And I eventually convinced her to move out to San Diego with me, and we got an apartment together. And 3 months after she moved there, we eloped. So I only knew her for about 3 months in person worth before, pulling that trigger to get married, which I highly recommend you don't do that.
Well,
But
Paul, if I didn't know that you were in the Navy, and so first off, you were definitely breaking some Navy stereotypes there. If I can joke a little bit, I
oh
didn't think
yeah,
that Navy men shacked up with women like that. So I'm just
Navy men
making jokes.
shack up with all sorts of women.
I know, no, I'm just making a joke there because I had a buddy. His name's Daniel. He was in the Navy, and we used to make those Navy seamen joke at the same
Uh-huh.
time. Uh, those like quote unquote gay jokes. You
Uh-huh.
have to put it
Yes.
in quotes now because it's 2025 and it keeps you from getting canceled.
That's right. Yeah, I get a lot of the village people jokes. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, but if I didn't think that you were a serviceman, because I've heard these stereotypes before in the service of other servicemen that the relationships could happen pretty quick and whatnot in marriages, I would have thought you were Mormon at the same time. So
Yeah. Well, then I would need multiple wives. But no, shout out to the Mormons. I live on the western slope of Colorado, so I'm pretty close to Utah. There's
yeah,
tons of Mormons around here, and they're great people.
well,
I
they're really
went
nice. I used to be
best
more.
thing you did. Okay. Yeah. Best My favorite thing about Mormons is when the missionaries come up to your house, a lot of people don't realize this, but you don't have to talk about the Bible with them. If you have a lot of work that needs to be done around the house, they have to give you community service or whatever. So if you're like, "Hey, I need some help painting the shed," they'll come back with paint buckets and dirty clothes, and they'll help you paint your shed. Like, they are really helpful people. But yeah, so I ended up married, and it actually wasn't bad in the beginning. And most marriages are pretty good in the beginning. We ended up having our daughter a couple years later, and we had a son a couple years after that. And so I have two wonderful kids with her, and we stayed married for 14 years. But Jay, the marriage really took a downturn after the kids were on the scene. About 7 years into that marriage, the last half of it was just miserable for me. I would work like 17-hour days just to avoid going home, because I knew as soon as I pulled my car in the driveway and I walked into that house, I was going to get an earful. And, she was going to nag me to death about whatever. She needs help with this and that. I don't do enough around the house. Just standard, nagging type stuff that wives tend to do. There was times where I didn't like sleeping with her, so in the same room. So I was like, I would go out in the garage, grab a cot, and go sleep in my office because I just didn't want to be around her, right? But I was also the guy that, like, I never would have quit. I never would have filed for divorce. That I was just resolved to be miserable. I was like, this is how life is supposed to be. I was the typical guy that's just living a life of quiet desperation, which a lot of young dads out there probably are in the same boat right now, because we took our vows seriously, and like my parents, they're still together. My grandparents, they were always together before they all passed away, but they never divorced. And so I was never going to quit. I was like, this is just how life is. You get married, you have a couple of kids, it starts going downhill, and then that's life, right? And you're basically Al Bundy for the for the rest of your life. That's how it's supposed to be. Lucky for me, in 2014, she filed for divorce, and we ended up separating. And at this point in my life, I was 50 pounds overweight. I hadn't been out on the dating circuit in 15 years. I had no idea what I was doing. It was a totally different scene now. Back when I met her, there were no dating apps. You actually had to get in the car with your boys and go down by the mall and go cruising for chicks. And all the chicks also had cars full of girls, and they were all out there cruising for guys. And you just holler at girls in the car, or try to walk up to them and talk to them in the mall. And nowadays everything's on apps, no one goes out anymore, and it's really hard to meet people organically. And so I found
What are your
myself,
thoughts on that though? Like overall with like dating apps, like for kind of like men today, like since you brought it up, I just want to ask you like What are your thoughts on it? Because I have thoughts.
Yeah. Well, my take now after I've started studying this stuff and started, understanding the psychology of women, I love it. I think dating apps are the greatest thing since sliced bread. A lot of guys are like, what? All the women are going for the top 5% of guys on dating apps. It's like, yeah, but there's a method to the madness, though. It's really not that hard to get in that top 5%. But most guys use statistics like that to disqualify themselves. Like, well, I might as well just give up and be lonely because there's no way I could ever compete. It's like, it's really not that hard. I mean, if you look in the western slope of Colorado, if you look at guys my age, most of the guys out here are overweight country bumpkins that are missing teeth and stuff like that. So just not being overweight, I was already in the top 25% of guys. It's not that hard. But yeah, there's a method to the dating madness. But I didn't know that when we first separated. And so I floundered, man. I floundered on the dating circuit for 11 months. I had some dates, they never went anywhere. And finally, 11 months later, I met this gal that I call Red Pill Chick. And she's the one that really was the catalyst for, me wanting to study this stuff because I ended up in a relationship with her. She was a little bit of a chubby chaser, I would say. And same MO as when I was in high school. Like the first girl that's nice to me, I go all in on this girl, don't overlook all of her red flags and just, I can fix her kind of thing. And I ended up in this relationship with her for 4.5 years. During that relationship, I lost all the weight because I was just unhappy being where I was at. So I got really big into running and weight training. I lost all the weight. And I immediately, though, went into what I call husband mode, right? Where I thought I reached this mythical finish line. I didn't have to try anymore. I already got her. And I immediately went into complacency, which is really what caused the end of my marriage. I just immediately went in there. So 2 years into that relationship, she was mentally checked out and she was starting to line up her male orbiters. And all women have orbiters, whether you guys realize it or not. Her work husband, or the guys that are always hitting her up at work to go take her out to lunch and stuff like that. It might sound innocent. She might make it sound innocent, but these guys they're just waiting for you to screw up. There's always a guy waiting out there in the wings. And so she started lining these guys up. And at the 4.5-year mark, she started acting so bad and pushing me away that I was finally like, I can't deal with this anymore. And I ended up breaking up with her. Come to find out maybe a year or so later that she was cheating on me, like right at the end. And the guy she ended up in a relationship with, like she was having like a little bit of an affair there at the end. And I had no idea. But when we broke up, all of a sudden I'm back on the dating circuit again. This time I'm 50 pounds lighter. I'm in pretty good shape. Now it's easy to get dates. And I'm like, what, it's like night and day, the difference. The problem was that I couldn't keep women around more than like 2 or 3 dates. I would go out on these dates. I would even maybe hook up with them on the first or second date. Couldn't keep them around. And I was like, what am I doing wrong here? And one of the blessings of being in that relationship with Red Pill Chick was she was really big into audiobooks. And so I was like, I bet you there's some audiobooks I could study and start learning like what's going on, because I'm clearly the problem. Like the 2 biggest relationships in my life failed, my adult life failed. And now I'm on the dating circuit. I can't keep women around more than 3 dates. I'm literally repelling women. What am I doing wrong? And so I took a deep dive. I read, I think the first book I read was No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover. It's a phenomenal book. A lot of guys don't even realize that they're the quintessential nice guy with nice guy syndrome. And it sounds like a good thing. Like, what's wrong with being a nice guy? Well, oftentimes you're anything but nice. You do these things to people please. You are doing what's called covert contracts, where you do nice things expecting something in return, and when you don't get it, now you're resentful and you get mad at the other person for not doing it. You'll help a girl's sister move because you have a truck and you're trying to be nice, but really in reality you're trying to get in her pants. Like there's all these types of sort of things that nice guys do that aren't exactly nice. And I found out, man, I was that guy. I was totally Mr. Nice Guy. I was very passive aggressive. I would never just say what I meant. I wasn't always trying to get my needs met, but when my needs weren't met, I would get mad about it, like that kind of stuff. I read a book called How to Be a 3% Man by Corey Wayne. And I've read that book like 24 times. It's life-changing book. And from that book, I ended up in a men's group on Facebook called the 3% Man Group. And that group doesn't exist anymore, but I was in that group and I was studying this stuff and I was out dating and posting date updates. So I would go out, I'd post updates like what worked, what didn't. And I was swapping notes with the guys. And I was so active in the group that they eventually just made me an admin in the group. And then out of being an admin in the group and having this, there was like 1,400 guys in that group. I just started the podcast, and the original, name "Come On Man" was a nod to Corey Wayne and the 3% Man. And I was interviewing other guys in the group. I just wanted to know like what their journey was, like why they ended up there, why they were studying this stuff, and what they were getting from the material, and then the podcast blew up from there. And I ended up talking to other authors in the space. And one of the big authors in the red pill space is a guy named Rollo Tomassi. He wrote a book called The Rational Male. There's 5 books in the Rational Male series. And I ended up becoming acquaintances with him and several other guys that he's associated with. And he ended up inviting me on a panel show called Rule Zero several years ago, which we do on Saturdays. And we all talk about, dating, intersexual dynamics, the psychology of women, all that kind of stuff on the show. And out of that whole experience, I started working on getting my life coach certification, my NLP certification, and I started coaching men. So that whole journey sort of it helped me find my mission in life, Jay. And I think most guys need a mission, and most guys don't have a mission. They just tiptoe through life hoping that they make it safely to death. And that's no way to live. And so my mission now is to help men level up and get better with women. And the funny thing about leveling up and getting better with women is it tends to make us better men in all areas of our lives, because all the things that women find attractive makes you better in business, makes you better in your social life. It just makes you better in general.
Yeah. No, 100%. Wow. What a journey. What a journey. But I think you were onto something there, right? While doing all this research, right? Learning that, okay, I'm the common denominator here, right? I think that's an important part of self-reflection that a lot of men maybe don't do enough, right? Be like, okay, well, this relationship ended because she cheated, or this relationship ended because of this other factor, right? There's a lot of pointing outward, right? Even just in general about things. We do that as human beings. Like just as humans, we do that all the time. It's like, oh well, that person did this to make me do this, or this person did that, or this person did that, so that caused this and this caused that, and that was the reaction there, right? It's always that kind of passing the blame around all the time. I see it all the time in I work in mental health during my 9 to 5.
Hmm.
So I see a lot of that, right? I see a lot of that. Where it's like, oh well, this person did this to me to make me feel this. Well, no, 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 no. Hold on. Those are whose feelings are those? Whose thoughts are those? Whose opinions are those? Whose are those? Mine. Okay, then who's responsible for them? Well, but no, no,
Hmm.
no. You're responsible. And I even teach kids this, right? I really work. That's one of the very first things I worked on with most of the kids I work with is what's in your control and what's not in your control. A very simple concept, right? But it's so, so important to remember my thoughts, my emotions, my opinions, the media I consume, the choices I make, my responsibilities, my boundaries, those are all mine. I own those. And I really try to drive this home with like little boys, especially. Like really try to drive this home with young men. Because it's so important, right? Because these are the things that are in their control that they have to know now at their ages. But that's the same for everybody, right? We all have things that are in our control. And our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, our choices, our actions, those are all ours. We have to own that. We can't blame somebody else. I remember after my divorce, I found this Will is it Will Smith? Maybe. I think it's Will Smith. This motivational Will Smith video. I think I played it on a podcast a long, long time ago. I won't search for it, but basically it was talking about like self love, but that's also part of owning up to your feelings. Like self love is also self accountability. Self love is also taking responsibility for your thoughts, your actions, your emotions. Like no one else can fix those except for you. Only you can fix those things. Paul, you can't fix my emotions. If I'm sad right now, you can be supportive, but I have to choose. I have to make those choices to get through that sadness, right? I have to own that sadness. I have to own why I'm sad. Yes, there may be external factors, but I can't blame that, right? Or if I get cheated on, right? I can't expect my ex to come back and apologize because they never will. They don't feel sorry at all, right? So I have to work through that because that's on me. I have to work through those things.
Yeah, a lot of guys, they don't understand, like, when you say stuff like that, you're not necessarily excusing the other person's bad behavior, but you can't change other people. You can only change yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, 99% of the guys who come to me, because what I have specialized in now is I help guys in dead bedroom situations, right? Their wife no longer wants to be intimate with them. They have a headache every night. If she throws them a bone and decides to be nice and give up some sex, it's like
Decides
it's very
to lay there.
it's
Decides to lay there for a minute.
yeah. What'd you say? Oh, they just lay there. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so they just
Decides
lay.
to take her pants off and lay there for a minute.
Right, yeah, it ends up being like they lay there, it's very lackluster, it's very starfish, she's not into it. She's just doing it because, like, okay, yeah, I asked him to clean the gutters, and so he cleaned the gutters, and so yeah, I guess I'll
Okay,
make good on my
and
promise.
that's a big issue too that we shouldn't skip over here, right? That's a big issue in marriages, right? So if there's women listening to this, I might get canceled by some of you women, but women, marriages need to stop equating sex to responsibility. Sex should not equal cleaning the gutters or cleaning the kitchen or taking care of the kids or doing this, that, or the other, right? Like, sex is not, this is one of my big problems personally. And you can disagree if you want, but when it's tied to what you do for me to give to you, that takes all the intimacy away from it, right? Then it becomes another chore.
Well, it's
Because if you have
transactional. It's
exactly,
basically prostitution at that point.
that's the word. That's the word I was looking for. Transactional. When it becomes transactional, that's a big point when marriages start to go downhill. I feel. Right? I look back in my marriage, my first marriage, right? And when it became strictly transactional, I felt like I was always having to work and work and work for it and do more and more and more and more and more for it. That's when our marriage just got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse.
Well, this whole process is called the betatization process. And I have a free ebook. If guys go to list.comeonmanpod.com, they can get the free ebook. It's called She's Made You Weak. It's like 11 pages, right? But it explains why women do that. And women do that. They start it very subconsciously. And if men don't realize that it's happening to them, they'll allow themselves to get into that type of transactional relationship. And it starts off with women testing you. And all women test men, either consciously or subconsciously. You can't avoid it. I get a lot of guys that give me flack on social media when I mentioned women testing and how to pass their tests. They'll say, "Well, if a woman tests me, I'm just going to dump her. I'm going to divorce her. I'm going to do whatever." And it's like, okay, but if you don't learn how to deal with this, it's going to happen in your next relationship too. So you might as well learn how to deal with it. But the betatization process is a 5-step process. It starts with them testing you, right? They test your frame. They poke at you. They do playful little jabs. They might question your manhood a little bit. They might do any kind of little thing to see if they can knock you off center, to see if they can get you in your feelings, to see if you'll blow up, right? They'll see if they can manipulate you. They'll see if you make plans, they'll try to change the plans last minute to see if you'll go along with whatever they want to do. What they're trying to do, and a lot of this is, again, is self-conscious or subconscious. They don't even know they're doing it. It's a survival mechanism, and it's women have been sort of programmed through their evolutionary wiring to do this to men because they need to see that this guy can handle himself in adverse situations, right? Like if you go back to the caveman days, if you couldn't handle her poking fun at you for the clothes you're wearing, how are you going to fight a saber-toothed tiger, right? If you can't even emotionally deal with her razzing you, how are you going to fight off a horde of invaders, right? And so women do that sort of thing to test your mettle, to see if you have your, we call them shit tests, but to see if you have your shit together. They're not doing it to be shitty, but the more you fail, the more you get up in your emotions, the more she's able to manipulate you, the more respect she loses for you. And that attraction dies, like slowly over time, the more she starts losing respect for you. Then she wants you to get open up, be more emotional, more be more vulnerable with me, right? And so guys take that at face value because we're very literal beings, and we start opening up and we start being more vulnerable, and then they take that and use it against us. And so then over time, they do that, then they end up putting us to work, right? So that's where the transactional sex starts coming in. Okay, if you do the gutters more, if you help me around the house with the dishes, if you do this, I'll put out more. She ends up putting you to work, doing her, end up being her dutiful plow horse at this point. By this point, she's lost all respect for you. There's no attraction there at all. And now she's looking at you like, why am I with this guy? And women are hypergamous by nature, which means they're always looking for their best possible option. It's more complex than that, but that's an easy explanation. They're looking for their best possible option. She starts seeing you as not her best possible option anymore. That's when her evolutionary selfishness kicks in and she starts lining up her male orbiters, and she either cheats on you or she files for divorce and just dumps you outright, right? But it's a 5-step process. It's like clockwork. And if guys don't realize it's happening, they will find themselves in this situation. And a dead bedroom is a massive symptom of what's happening here. And a lot of guys don't even realize they're on borrowed time. They're on borrowed time when they're at this point. And the way to turn things around is, you mentioned it at the beginning, embracing your masculinity. You have to be the leader. You have to be the guy that sets the tone and manages and leads that relationship. Right now, if you're in the dead bedroom situation, if you're doing chores for sex, she's running the relationship. She's in the driver's seat, and she doesn't trust you to drive anymore. And so that's where my latest books come in. They help guys realize what's happening and start turning that dynamic around. And you can turn it around. You can fix this.
How can you turn it around? Right? How can you get back some of that masculine control and start to get back some of that masculine energy? If you've been beta-tized, how can you start to get back some of that masculine energy, start to get back as the alpha of your household, alpha of your relationship, and start to get some of that back? Because we need more alpha, right? We have too much beta just across everything, right? And I don't know if you listened to the recent interview. We're recording this in March, so about a week, not even a week ago, about a week ago, Andrew Tate was on PBD. I don't know if you listened to that podcast or not.
I did not, but I'm familiar with both those guys.
Okay. It's super interesting. I'm a big fan of PBD. Never been the biggest fan of Andrew Tate, but he made a good point. He's like, why do you think so many young men are attracted to what I bring? Right? Because I force the issue on masculinity. I encourage them to be masculine. Like, I have no problem with that, like using my platform to talk about masculinity. And that's why so many people hate me, because there's so many, betas and stuff. And he pushes the issue on positive, good masculine energy. Like, there's really nothing wrong with being masculine. But in today's world, if you're masculine, if you're too masculine, it's a problem. If you're not masculine enough, it's a problem. If you're too middle masculine, it's a problem. So it's like masculinity is just bad all around.
Yeah,
so
there's
that back and start to change that narrative, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. A lot of not to get political, but a lot of sort of left wingers really hate the positive masculinity message. They really like pushing the toxic masculinity stuff, which is nonsense. There's no such thing as toxic masculinity. There's toxic people, but masculinity by itself is not toxic. It's actually good. It's like when a building's on fire and you're stuck in a building, you want the most toxic masculine dude you could find to help pull you out of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I don't want some DEI firefighter in LA to be like, well, your color's going to depend on if I save you or not.
Right.
And your gender identity, it's going to identify if I identify to save you or not, kind of thing. I'm going to go rescue the DEI person, not you first, white dude. Sorry. Kind of thing. It's like, no, I want, if I'm on fire, or if there's a fire, if I'm getting robbed or something, right? Or some shit's going down, if there's a school shooter, I want the biggest, baddest motherfuckers to come up in that school that can. And I want them to be unafraid. I want them to have no fear, all the masculinity. I want them to be dripping testosterone, so that shooter, as soon as those people walk into the school to help this, and it sucks that this is the scenario that we can all relate to, and that picture, it sucks. But I want them to go into that school, the SWAT, and be so unafraid that they're gonna get this dude, no ifs, ands, or buts, and they go in no issues. I don't want the person that's gonna go into that situation be like, well, let's make sure you're safe and make sure everyone's safe, kind of thing. It's like, no, go get the fucking shooter.
Right.
Go get him.
Exactly.
Like, terminate.
Exactly. But yeah, so for people that are sort of, left of center of their politics, there's a really good book that breaks down the masculinity crisis that's happening in the West. It's called The Boy Crisis by Warren Farrell. Now, the problem with the boy crisis is, like I said, it does a great job of breaking down why, boys are struggling, men are struggling. We're basically raised as defective women now because being a man, having masculine traits, having masculine emotions, right? Like women, when women are having a bad day, they tend to default to sadness. They tend to cry when they're having a bad day. That's an acceptable emotion. In fact, boys should cry, is what they'll tell you. But when guys get upset, when we're having a bad day, we tend to get angry. Like we sort of default to anger, and that is toxic. You being angry is a toxic thing, right? That's what
Agreed.
we're told. And so you're not allowed to do what's natural to you. And so that book breaks it down really well. The problem with it is the prescriptions in that book are awful. Like they're like, oh, in order to deal with this, we have to double down on the things that got us here. Like boys need to be more vulnerable. Boys need to be more weak. You've got to let them be, have more feminine type jobs and stuff, like whatever it is. It's terrible advice. And so a good friend of mine, his name is RP Thor. He's an author in the red pill space as well. He wrote a book called A Dominant Masculine Presence, which is his answer to the masculinity crisis, which is to teach men to be more masculine again, right? How to have a dominant masculine presence. And that comes with, like you talked earlier about having control of your own emotions, right? We call that frame in the space, having good mental frame, recognizing that other people don't dictate how you think and feel. That's all part of your mental frame. Having more dominant masculine body language, because a lot of guys don't even realize how closed off their body language is, how their body language signals insecurity, all this kind of stuff. Women, they've done studies on this. Something like 95% of what you're saying to women comes from your tone and your body language. They're not even listening to the words coming out of your mouth half the time. That's why when guys are trying to communicate with their wife and they think that communication is the key to a healthy relationship, they're not even speaking the same language, because what men say is what we mean. What women say is how they feel. It's totally different. And when your tone and your body language is off, she's not even listening to the words coming out of your mouth. That's why she's able to pull out the tone card and win every argument. I don't like your tone, right? Even if you're making really good points, she's not even listening to those, right? She's got the tone card. So a dominant masculine presence teaches you all the 7 skills. He came up with 7 skills of a dominant masculine presence. They all start with the letter P. One of those skills is psychology. Having good psychology and understanding psychology. That's why my book is Psychology-Paradigm, because it's a part of his book series. So he created the book, The Dominant Masculine Presence, and then he asked a bunch of us in the space to write our own books based on his original book. And it's called The Essential Skills of a Masculine Presence series. And my book was the first one to come out. There's 2 other ones after mine. And then there's one that's coming out that he wrote called A Superhero Inside that should be coming out in the next couple of weeks. But Psychology Paradigm, it's all about reprogramming your subconscious mind to have more of a dominant masculine presence. And a lot of guys don't realize this, but a vast majority of your results in life come from your thoughts. Your thoughts create your actions cause reactions, those reactions cause your results in life. And if you don't change what's going on up here, you're going to keep getting the same thing, right? Especially in our relationships. If you don't have that dominant masculine presence, if you don't know how to set the tone and lead, you're going to end up in a dead bedroom situation. And then you're going to be miserable and, go grab your cot out of the garage and go sleep in your office, right? So if you want to avoid that, that's a great place to start, is working on your own thoughts, your own emotions, having control over that. And then you'll find that once your subconscious is programmed, everything else will fall in line with that.
Yeah, I can agree with that, right? And I think have you ever read the book Point Man?
I have not.
Okay, I would highly recommend you read it. I don't know, there's a lot of religious tones to it, so I don't know if you're religious at all, but I think it's a good read, regardless of the religion part of it. Basically, what the book does is it breaks down kind of how the nuclear family has been denuclearized over time, and over the last 3 generations, let's say, from boomers to now, more or less. And basically, what had happened, or let's say, Great Depression to now, more or less, actually. Let's take the last 100 years, and it breaks down how back, 20s, 30s, 40s, up to the 50s ish or so, right? Where boys and girls were raised in the home, right? By the mom until they were, I don't know, 6, 7 years old, right? 8, 9-ish, somewhere around there, right? They didn't really, maybe they went to school, maybe they were more than likely taught by their mothers, whatever they knew, kind of thing, right? For a few years, depending on what the family structure looked like. So then let's say dad's a blacksmith, right? That boy's 8, 9 years old, and then he goes to work with his dad every single day, sun up, sun down. Whenever the dad goes to work, son's right there by his side. The sons are with their dad basically 24/7, basically all day, and the daughters doing the same thing with their moms, doing whatever the mom's doing, housemaking, whatever needs to be done at home, around the property, in the community, whatever their job is, right? Whatever their role is in the family. Maybe it was working the convenience shop, maybe it was sewing, whatever it was, right? Because women had their jobs at the same time. But then what had happened was the industrial age and post World War II, and then more schools opened up, and then affordability and everything kind of snowballed after that, right? To where now boys are going from the home to school with female teachers, more feminine influence, more and more feminine influence, because men weren't teaching at schools, wasn't a thing. But before this, I missed a part, key part here. Boy turns 18, boy becomes an adult. Boy then tells father, "Hey, I don't actually want to be a blacksmith." Father's like, "Okay, what do you want to do then?" "Oh, I want to go and I want to go learn how to run a shop, or I want to open up a business. I want to open up a convenience store." Dad would be, "Okay, no issues. Let's go talk to Paul. Sorry, Paul. Let's go talk to Paul down the street. Paul owns a convenience shop. He's one of my good friends. I trust him. Be great." And let's say your son wanted to come to me, the blacksmith, and we would arrange a deal. We would talk and we arrange a deal where it's like, "Okay, I'm going to oversee his apprenticeship here. You're going to oversee your son's apprenticeship with me." So we're all kind of like, all four of us are now, we're all commingling in both of our trades, but
Mhm.
watching our boys we're overseeing that process for them to make sure that, hey, don't influence my boy that way, or hey, influence him this way, or hey, this is or hey, this is my take here, kind of thing. And it was that ongoing, right? So then both sets were like, "Okay, I gotcha." And they would work out a deal to where it would work out for everybody to be convenient and things like that. So it was always that trade-off of services, right? But the boys were then learning exactly what they wanted to. So then when the time came, "Oh, hey, I'm gonna open up my own shop." And then you would be like, "Okay, well, here's a place you can do it. This is what you would need, all the things." And he would already know that because he learned under you and his father the exact way how to do that. So he learned the right way. That was his trade school essentially. And then your son, who wanted to be a blacksmith, now fully confident, fully trained, now he can work for me. He can do blacksmith work with me, and I pay him and all that fun stuff. Now that his apprenticeship's over. So it was a really, really cool. But we lost that when we got into public schools, and then everyone wants to say, "Oh yeah, public schools are great," and all this stuff. It's like, no, they were meant to create factory workers, and they still are that same system. Our kids barely learn math, reading, writing, arithmetic. Here in Washington State is terrible. We spend a top 5 per student in the nation, and since 2019, we've had a 110% increase per student, like funding, but our test scores have so funding went up like this, right? So with education, Paul, you see all that money going in. Do you think education scores are going to get better or worse with more funding? Naturally, what's your first thought?
Well, you would think that it would get better,
You would
but,
think, right? You want
yeah.
to think that. You want to. But no, test scores have declined. There's a massive gap, like absolutely massive. And
I don't know how it is where you're at, but where I'm at, like, I call them teacher goof off days. We have all these teacher in-service days now where the
yeah,
teachers, like, they close down the school, the kids don't have school, and the teachers have meetings, and then
all the development days.
right, which is fascinating because when I was a kid, there was none of that. It was you had your like, winter break and summer break and maybe a spring break or something. But parent teacher conferences, they didn't take days off for that. They would do it in the evening. But now it's like, oh, well, we can't pay these teachers overtime. We can't do all this. It's like, well, where's all that funding going?
Teacher
Right?
unions, funding's going to unions. But yeah, so no, our scores have gone down dramatically. So our schools aren't really helping our kids, and that's the whole point of what I was saying there is like the school system kind of started to ruin the masculinity of our boys. Take because you took the boys away from their fathers,
Yeah,
right? And then
Boy Crisis talks about that. So does No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover. He was saying
yeah,
how, like, boys had that male masculine mentorship, on the farm, like you said, blacksmith, like all that kind of stuff. They had that male masculine influence in their life. And now mom works at the factory too. Now we have both men and women working. So you get babysitters who are 99% women. You have teachers who are still to this day it's like 95% women. So boys are only getting that feminine influence. And God bless them. I know like women try their best, but women can't teach men how to be men.
No, no.
And so
And
that's
even
caused a
worse,
lot of problems.
it's even worse because you look at what Lyndon B. Johnson did with creating the nanny state, taking fathers out of the home completely,
Mhm.
completely incentivizing to get fathers out of the home and taking the boys away, like completely taking the boys away from the fathers, putting the fathers out of the picture. Then that's kind of bringing this full circle here. That's why we got to encourage masculinity again, right? We have to encourage men to step up and be the fathers that they are meant to be the fathers, to be the leaders in the home that God created you to be, that God intended for you to be. He didn't want you to be out of the home. That was never God's intention. Read the Bible. That's never his intention. I don't think it once says, oh yeah, fathers be out of the home, be half-time, part-time, weekends, every other weekend, one week in a month kind of thing. God never intended for a society to be like this where fathers are out of the home. That was all made by man. That was all made to get children away from the fathers and away from that masculine influence, because if you can beta them and you can influence them to be more feminine, then you essentially get more control. Kind of like you're mentioning there, right? That control comes in.
A lot of guys will hear this too, and they hear, yeah, we got to encourage masculinity. And they might even say, I'm a masculine man. What are you talking about? I watch football. I drink beer. I like action flicks. Like that's masculinity, right? And it's like, well, it's more than that. It's leadership.
Jelly beans and Winnie the Pooh, obviously, as you can see in my background here.
It's more than that, right? It's leadership. It's being decisive. How many guys have you heard out there complain, man, I hate it when my wife can't pick what's for dinner, right? Have you ever had the dinner debate, Jay, where you're like, hey, honey, what do you want to eat tonight? And she's like, I don't know. What do you want? And then it's the most annoying thing ever. Well, if you were to set the tone and lead your relationship and you were more decisive, you wouldn't even ask her. You would just pick a place. You would say, hey, honey, we're getting
Oh, here.
steak tonight,
Yeah.
you know? And you know what's funny when you do that? You get 99.9% of the time your wife will go, yeah, that sounds good. I'll go grab my shoes. She doesn't want to make decisions. She wants to relax in her feminine. She doesn't, and especially if she's she works, 9 to 5. She probably makes decisions all day long. The last thing she wants to do when she comes home is to make another decision. So if you set the tone and lead and you're a decisive guy and you're like, hey, we're going to Chili's tonight, like she'll love that. But most guys won't do that. They're like, well, I just want to make her happy. Like, and if I pick a place, she's not going to like it, and then I'm going to have to hear about it, and I don't want to deal with that. You're being a woman right now. You're acting like a woman if that's your mentality, because there's ways of handling that too, right? If you say, hey, honey, we're going to Chili's tonight, grab your shoes. She's like, oh, I don't like Chili's. Well, okay. Do you have a better suggestion? Well, no, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to Chili's. You're welcome to join me. Right. That's how you sort of set that tone. And the thing is that I've never even gotten to that second place. When I started practicing that, it blew my mind. I was like, holy crap. I always get to eat where I want to eat. This is amazing. Yeah, a lot of guys are afraid to do that. They walk on eggshells. They're afraid of making their wife or their girlfriend unhappy. They're afraid they're going to lose access to sex, right? Because she's got the sex card. So they will do whatever it takes to try to keep her happy, the happy wife, happy life paradigm, right? You mentioned at the beginning, you said the word partner, like we need to be better for our partners. That's one thing in my book that is not a very popular sort of talking point, but I encourage guys not to look at your wife as your equal partner. And the reason why is because what happens is if you look at her like an equal partner, naturally as a man, you want her buy-in on stuff. Like I can't make a purchase decision without consulting my partner. I need to make sure she's on board with it. Well, the thing is now she's the decider. And so now you end up deferring to her to make these decisions for you, which puts her in her masculine, which she doesn't want to be. It's unnatural for her. And so she starts losing respect for you. So I invite guys to stop looking at your wife as an equal partner. Look at her like she's look at it like a captain executive officer type dynamic, where if and I'm a Navy guy, that's where I get that. But when you're the captain, you're overall in charge of the mission of the ship. And the executive officer, it's still a leadership role, but she's not overall in charge. She's there to help you and be there to support the mission. And so there's no reason not to take what she says under advisement because she's smart, right? She's your executive officer. You wouldn't have married her if she wasn't smart, but you're still going to do what you're going to do, you know? So it's not an equal partnership. It's more of a, you know, she's right below you. She's your second in command. And if you lead your relationship that way, and you mentioned the Bible, it's more along the lines of how we've generationally been programmed. And you'll find that your relationship will be much smoother. She'll relax into her feminine more and follow your lead. But most guys have deferred to their wife so long because she's their partner. Now she's running the show and she has no respect for you, and now you're in a dead bedroom situation. So yeah, part of the essential skills psychology paradigm book, I talk to guys about letting go of that mental model.
Yeah. No, I agree there. So I'm just trying to look up a passage here. Can't remember.
Is it in the biblical passage?
It is, yeah. I have a note on it. I'm just trying to figure out where the hell I have that note. I'm not gonna find it. Am I? I'm pretty sure it's in the book of First Peter, more or less. Because First Peter talks a lot. The First and Second Peter talk a lot about relationships. They talk a lot about the roles of relationships, and so I would encourage the listeners to study those sections. I have like 5 notes on those sections because I remember there was a multiple week study in church that we went over, and so just something to think about there. So yeah, First Peter really good about explaining those roles, but the best part of it to think about too, right? You mentioned like she's on the leadership team, but she's not the leader of the team. She's not going to make the final call. I think that's a great way to put it. I think it's also great, biblically to think of it like, remember your wife. She's like you're the rock of the relationship, right? Like rocks they're tough, they're hard, they're unbreakable, they're hard to damage, right? Your wife's not that. Your wife's a very delicate piece of china, like a very, very delicate piece of china that is very easy to break, very easy to crack, that you have to treat so delicately and with so much love and so much care and whatnot. Those two things aren't equal if you think about it like that. Like women are meant to be in this role, and I'm not trying to be sexist or anything, right? And I also don't love the word partner. Like if that's your wife, right?
Well, it's become such a part of our lexicon that a lot of people default to that.
Yeah, people default to every like term that's politically correct, and it's dumb. A lot of it's really stupid. It's like just call them what they are. Just call them what they are. We don't have to be politically correct all the damn time. It's
why can't you say wife or girlfriend? Like,
Yeah,
it's not like, that. It's still one word, So
does that make them less? And then that's your partner. No, it's like fucking wife.
Yeah. Well, it's, everyone wants to be inclusive nowadays, right? So they're like, well, I don't want to have to say, well, assume that this guy's married when he, married to a woman, and say wife when he might be a gay man. And, and so you can't say that. You have to say partner. Okay. Well, for heterosexual relationships, you can still say wife or girlfriend, though. But and
if someone wants to correct you, let them correct you. It's fine. Be like, oh, my bad.
Yeah, right. And I don't think most people take offense to that, And people that do, like, why do you want them in your life anyway? My bad. Yeah, right. It's interesting. You talked about being like biblically, it says like you have to be her rock and she's delicate and stuff like that. A lot of what the messaging out there, the social programming is, guys need to be more vulnerable and be more emotionally available and stuff. And what guys will hear those words and they'll think, oh, I need to be more open with my wife and be more, put my heart on my sleeve and tell her how I feel all the time. A lot of guys don't realize that women inherently don't care about your problems. They don't care about any of that stuff. And it sounds really harsh. And a lot of women will argue with me about it. And what I say to that is, I'm sure there's a lot of women that want to care. They may even think that they care. They just aren't wired to care, right? They like the outcome. So if you're struggling in your career right now, but it's but you're slaying dragons, you're going through all sorts of crap at work, but at the end of the day, you're getting promoted and you're getting paid. That's all she cares about. She cares about your success. Men are success objects to women. She doesn't care about the struggle to get there, right? And so a lot of guys don't realize that. And so they end up oversharing with their wife. And that's not what it means. It doesn't mean, she wants you to be more vulnerable. Basically, what it means is she wants you to be able to understand her feelings and be able to navigate her feelings without getting up in your emotions about it. Like, that's what it means. So if a woman comes to you and she's like, honey, what's like, if she thinks that you're bothered by something because of your body language or whatever, and she's like, honey, what's bothering you? Like, are you having a bad day? Like, tell me about it. What she's essentially saying is, I'm noticing something about you. It's making me feel bad. Can you acknowledge my feelings on this? That's really what women are saying. And so if you go, what am I doing that makes you feel that way? And she goes, oh, well, you're sitting there and you're moping and you're lost in your thoughts. And I feel this way. Oh, okay. So what you're saying is, me being sort of stoic right now is making you feel this way. Is that right? Right? If you just replay back her emotions to her, she'll feel like you're being emotionally available and vulnerable with her, but you've not said anything. You're not laying your problems on her. What I recommend for guys is like, we're not robots either. We do have emotions. They do need to be expressed somehow, but there's like a time and a place for it. And your wife's not that. So get yourself a good circle of guys, right? Get a good group of guy friends that you can go to, get a therapist, get a coach, but get someone that you can talk to about your problems, and don't, like, really compartmentalize that and don't lay that on your wife. Cause if you do, she might listen to you at first, but the more you do it, the more she's going to be like, God, this guy can't handle his crap. He's not the right guy for me. Right. Then her hypergamy starts kicking in. She's like, this other guy over here, he never, whines and complains about all the struggles he's going through. I think I'm starting to like him a little bit better. Right. Like, that's sort of how women operate. So it's like, just avoid all that together. Get a good circle of guys, save your struggles for your guy friends or your therapist or your coach, and don't bring that on your wife. And you'll find you'll have a much happier marriage. She'll think, man, this guy's a rock. He's so stoic. He can handle anything. It's like you have ways of coping with that stuff, that's a little bit healthier, and you don't bring it into your marriage, and she'll respect you more for it.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that. I think there's a time and place for it, like you said, right? There is a time and place for it within the marriage to talk about those things, right? But it can't be all the time. It can't be every single day, every single little problem, right? Some of those things you do have to be able to deal with. You do have to be able to compartmentalize. You do have to be able to work through your stuff. You do also need your own outside support as well. But I think there's a lot of support that can come from within the marriage as well.
One thing I'll say about that, right, is if you find yourself talking to your wife about your problems, it's not the end of the marriage right there. A lot of guys like sort of start thinking black and white, right? You can tell her that stuff. It's just that you need to tack a positive onto the end of it, right? Like, yeah, I'm struggling with all this. This guy was a jerk at work and da 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 da. But this is how I'm handling it, right? You got to let her know, like, I'm handling the problem, and then she'll be like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, he's got it handled. That, and then it's fine. But
No, I hear
it,
you.
yeah,
Yeah. All right. Well, for the last few minutes here, do you want to jump into the dad zone with me?
sure.
So the dad zone is 4 questions here that I don't let you know ahead of time, so you get to just kind of work on the fly here. It's a fun, lighthearted way to just end the podcast here and bring it full circle and to kind of bring it down a little bit. I love the conversation today. I think this was a very important conversation for us to be having. So jumping into the dad zone here, does pineapple go on pizza?
Um, it can. I mean, it wouldn't be my first choice, but I've eaten it, and it's not bad.
Okay. Okay. Very wide-eyed view there. A lot of people approach that one very delicately, I noticed. They're like, "Oh, well, it can." Very rarely do I get a definitive yes or no. Who are 3 people, dead or alive, that you would invite to a dinner party?
Oh, wow. To a dinner party, I would love to have. Let's see. I would like to have Dr. Robert Glover over to my dinner party. Um, I would probably like Elon Musk. That would be an interesting conversation. And let's see here. Let's say George Washington. Let's say George Washington. That'd be cool.
What is your guilty pleasure food or song?
Food. Yeah, I'm definitely a recovering food addict.
What's your guilty pleasure food then?
Oh, I love pizza. Like, pizza's probably my go-to. Pizza and
Love it.
fried chicken. Yeah.
Fried chicken. Yep, that's a weakness of mine. A weakness of mine. Last one here. Last one here. So to wrap all the things up, all the things, what is one piece of advice that you would offer to a young dad? Let's say he's 18 to 22 years old, just had his first kid, and he's just starting out on his fatherhood journey. What is one piece of advice that you would offer to him?
Oh, wow. I would say that don't worry about it. Like things will come out in the wash, because you'll find that, man. I remember when I had my daughter. I was 25 at the time, but when I had my daughter, I was like, almost a nervous wreck at first. I had never really taken care of any kids, never changed any diapers before her, and I was like, oh my god, I got to keep this small being alive at least for the next 18 years, and then it's on her. And I just realized, man, like life tends to work itself out, like things end up being okay. There's things that you're gonna freak out about. Your kids are gonna get hurt. They're gonna deal with crap at school. You're not gonna like it. They're gonna get bad grades, but it all comes out in the wash.
Love it. I love that saying. It all comes out in the wash. Very great. Well, Paul, this has been a super, super amazing, fun, insightful conversation. I really enjoyed it. Our listeners will surely enjoy this one, I'm sure. So last one here, where can people connect with you and follow your work, learn more about you?
Well, if they go to fixdeadbedrooms.com, that's my blog. I have daily articles on there that'll help them in the relationship situations. And from there, you can follow me on social media. I'm on all the good platforms. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, or X, I guess now. You can find my podcast if you go to that website. It's available on all major podcast platforms, including YouTube. In fact, right after this, I got to go do a live stream. And then you can also find my books there. I've got 3 books out. The one we talked about today was Psychology Paradigm. My latest book just came out in January. It's called Get Her to Fuck You Again. It's a red pill guide to fixing a dead bedroom. But you can find all my books at fixdeadbedrooms.com.
I love it. Well, Paul, again, thanks again for tuning in to our conversation. And Paul, thank you again for your time and being here with me today. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to rate, review, and share the episode with a fellow dad or parent who needs to hear it. Go listen to Come On Man on wherever you get your podcasters. Go and listen to it right now. Listen to the latest episode. And until next time, stay present, stay engaged, and keep striving to be the best parent you can be.